Hey, I have no future. What's up? It's a culture detective here investigating your favorite movies, and today I will continue doing reviews on Hong Kong movies. Yes, because I'm born and raised and I'm still in Hong Kong, and I, as a film lover who is also a Hong Konger, I have to watch a bunch of Hong Kong movies. That's kind of my responsibility. So, today I'm going to be talking about a movie that is lesser known, that is a little obscure. Probably the most obscure film I've ever seen, even though it has 100,000 views on YouTube. And that movie is Hong Bong, or in English, The Imp, directed by Yu Wan-kwong. And this is a horror movie released in the year 1981. Oh, also, I forgot to mention that Fruit Chan, the writer and director of Made in Hong Kong, the 1997 movie, actually worked for Yu Wan Kwong on this movie as a log keeper. And that's pretty interesting. And yeah, as far as horror movies go, I'm not an expert. There are horror movies from the West that I really love. And so far from Hong Kong, there really isn't a single horror movie that I truly enjoy. I've reviewed The Eye, or Gin Guai, not too long ago, which is a Hong Kong Singaporean horror film, which I thought has a really good premise, but the ending just didn't quite land, and a lot of the scenes are just okay. There aren't that many disturbing moments, to be honest. Now we have The Imp, and this movie is released 20 years before The Eye. And I'm gonna be honest here, it's kinda decent. This movie is actually, in my opinion, better than The Eye, but I honestly think it still has a lot of room for improvement. So first of all, the plot is basically this man. His name is Akung, and Akung, he is a father. He has a son. He has a wife, and his son is about to be born. And he needs to get a job because he needs to raise his family. But he goes from job to job to job to job, and he can't get a job until he got a job as a security guy in a mall doing a night shift. Things started going wrong when there are weird green smoke and strange supernatural incidents that had caused a lot of bad luck. And so the premise and the story of this movie is actually pretty deeply tied into Chinese mythology and Chinese theology as well. So if you know nothing about Chinese mythology, this is all random whack shit. Now let's talk about the pros before I talk about the cons. The pros is this movie is actually tightly paced. It doesn't feel too slow, it doesn't feel too fast, it just feels like the right kind of movie. And given that it is released in 1981, it's actually pretty impressive that a movie like this and written this way came out. And it's pretty impressive. Another thing about this movie that I like is that it has a pretty solid premise, actually. So essentially, the reason why there is all this strange paranormal, supernatural things going around is because the main character of Akung is born on um on a yin year, yin month, yin day at the yin hour. And that automatically makes him a man of bad luck, a man of misfortune. And a demon tries to be reincarnated by being the main character's son, who is yet to be born. And yeah, again, it's really deeply tied into Chinese mythology and Taoism, and it takes a lot of context. And another thing about this movie that actually surprised me is that this movie actually has a really strong sense of color, which is pretty shocking, given that I don't think back in the early 80s the studios would give a lot of money to directors who make horror films. But Yeah, the colors of this movie is actually surprisingly pretty damn good. Kind of reminds me of like Dario Argento's Suspiria. Even though, as far as coloring goes, Suspiria still wins by 100 miles, but this movie is kind of like that. It's got so many colors during a few scenes. It's actually kind of impressive, especially how there's a strong sense of, oh, green means evil, red means good. And there's a scene where basically a Taoist, not really a priest, saying priest would be the wrong translation. It's more like a master of Taoist arts. And this master, he's trying to fight the demon. And so it's a constant battle between red and green in that scene. And it was actually pretty impressive how they managed to make a lot of red and greens and mash them together and have this many color effects. It's actually pretty impressive. There's also blue and other colors in this movie that's pretty toyed around pretty well. Alright, here are the cons. First of all, while I enjoy the premise, the story isn't really that great. It still feels a little typical. And there are a couple of scenes in this movie that is just straight up comical. Like, there are a couple of death scenes that are just so poorly acted, it's almost comical. Like, there's a scene where one of the characters gets chokes on a dog bone when eating dog, which is disgusting. And I'm glad that eating dogs and cats and monkeys and a bunch of other animals is totally illegal now in Hong Kong. But that's disgusting. But the choking scene in and of itself is comical and gross. And then there's another scene where one of the characters gets suffocated by a newspaper, which is which is also kind of hilarious. Like, in concept, when you think about it, it's kind of stupid. But the rest of the movie is pretty good. Again, there's a scene where a Taoist master tries to fight against a demon. And if you know nothing about Taoism or Chinese mythology, you're going to be so confused. Why is the guy waving around a piece of paper? Why is the guy waving around this long sword? Why is this guy trying to do this weird finger thing? I'm not that familiar with Taoism or Chinese mythology either. There's a lot for me to research. But yeah, you need a lot of context in order to enjoy that scene, so it's not going to be for everybody. And at the end, I just want to say that this movie is just not that scary. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me being old, but after a certain age, I haven't seen a single horror movie that really shook me to the core, that made me afraid of turning off the lights when I sleep. But I remember very vividly that when I was young, after I watched horror movies, I would be like, oh my god, I don't even want to turn off the lights. I don't even want to look at mirrors. But it's just not that scary. However, I must say that the last act is really scary. Objectively speaking, it's pretty scary. There are some pretty effective scares and disturbing moments in the final act. There are zombies, of course, but the whole a demon child trying to traumatize everyone's lives and how time is running out. This is actually a pretty good concept, and it made for some really effective scares. But I think overall, did this movie really shake me to the core? Not really. It's just not that scary. So yeah, overall, Hong Bong, the Imp, it's a surprisingly decent movie, but did it really deliver scene after scene? No, and it has a lot of room for improvement. But that being said, the colors of this movie, kind of impressive. I am giving Hong Bong a strong 7 out of 10. And if you like Hong Kong horror movies, I would definitely recommend this one. So, have you watched Hong Bong from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.